Prepare to enter the fun learning zone. Nee, 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 nee. Hello. Welcome to week 3 of Imagine You're a Scientist, the STEM experiments brought to you by the Zelienople Area Public Library for the summer reading program in the year 2020. Today, we will go back to our fairy tale roots and find some scientific inspiration from some stories that we all probably know. And this one is pretty famous, Jack and the Beanstalk. You can find this at our library or in Butler County. There's plenty of Jack and the Beanstalk related titles like this one. This one looks interesting. I suppose it's from the Giants' perspective. And then you also have a longer tome here, longer work here. So, pretty interesting. A couple different takes, and there's more. Trust me, there's more. So, anyway, like I was saying, our experiments today will revolve around this story. We have two pretty simple ones today. One is called Walking Water, and the other one is a simple demonstration of the water cycle. So, without further ado, we'll move on to the first experiment, Walking Water. Okay, so, Walking Water. It's very simple. What you'll need is 3 glasses. It can be any size. I recommend a smaller size if you have one. You want to make them all the same size, too. And what you're going to do with them is fill them up with the same exact amount of water. So, more than likely, you're going to want to use a liquid measuring cup, or if you have the patience, use a tablespoon, something that just measures liquid and can get an equal amount. And so you're going to have 3 of those glasses, fill 2 of them with water at the exact same level. And you're going to want to use food coloring. I've used blue and yellow because I think red and yellow, producing orange. I wasn't so sure how different they'd look, but if you mix blue food coloring with yellow food coloring, you get a nice green, and you can tell all of them apart pretty easily. Not that that is an issue here, but I think it does help. And the only other thing that you need for this experiment are various types of paper. So I've done one already. I've used paper towels. It works, but it can go kind of slowly. So I'm going to show you the result of that later, a photograph I have of that. But I've also seen that you can use toilet paper or coffee filters. So what you're going to do with the coffee filters is make I don't know what to call this. It's not necessarily rectangular, but you're going to, fold it over, kind of make it look like this. And what we're going to do, and I'll flip my camera over in a minute, but you're going to kind of go like this, and you're going to stick one end in the watery part, and you're going to want to stick the other end in the empty part. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other one of these. So we need 2 pieces of paper that are the same. And coffee filters should soak up pretty fast. They're pretty flimsy pieces of paper. So that's good. That'll speed it up for today's experiment. And do the same thing. One end in this case, I'm putting it in the blue end, and then one in the empty jar. And then the other one, of course, has one in the yellow, and then one in the empty. So it is moving. It did soak up the water fast, but I think what we'll do is go to the results first, and then come back and see if there's any movement on this that we can detect. So let me go get the picture. I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, so here was the result of this morning's experiment. It did take about 4 hours or 3 hours. It wasn't a very, it wasn't even finished because what you're supposed to see and what you will see more than likely, and maybe that's the challenge for this week. You guys, when you do it, give it a longer time and see if these 3 glasses equal out. So just to go over the experiment once again, the 2 jars on the ends, the blue liquid and the yellow liquid are just water mixed with about 5 drops of food coloring each. And then, given some time, with those pieces of paper rolled into 2 glasses, the water will rise through the paper towels in this instance, through an action called capillarity or capillary action, and it'll deposit into the third or the middle jar here. You'll notice that my jars aren't the same size, so that could skew things too. I couldn't find a third one, but if you use 3 of the same size, those 3 should equal out, which is also interesting because the result of that is an equilibrium or a balance, and that's important too. You guessed it, for plants. Plants use this process to bring water up from the soil to the highest parts of their, uh, to the top of the plant. Yeah. So that's why this relates to the story, Jack and the Beanstalk. This is the process of how water and nutrients from the soil get spread throughout the whole of the beanstalk, if you will. All right, so that almost does it for walking water. The version we're doing with the coffee filters is coming along quite nicely, considering it's only been a few minutes. There's already a few centimeters of green water compiling, but I'm not sure you can really tell on the camera if it would be green or not, so I'm going to give it a little more time so it shows up visually a little better. And with the time in the meantime, or in between that and now, we're going to do the water cycle experiment, which, as you can see, requires a bowl of water. You can use one that's not clear. I actually did my first one with a what would you call it? Non-translucent or opaque? Yeah, opaque bowl. So, but I think if you have Tupperware, it might work a little better, so you can see where you can mark the water level on the outside a little better. But yeah, this experiment, like the one before, it doesn't really require anything that you should have to go out and get. These things most likely are already in your home. So you just get a bowl of water and a cup, an empty cup, and you stick it in there. You do want it to be a decent amount of water, but you don't want it to be too much water because with an empty cup it'll start floating or tip over. So we need this to stay flat and on the base of the bowl, or in this case at the base of the Tupperware. So don't fill it up with too much water. I've heard about a third or a half. Just make sure it's not too close to where it's starting to float. And what else do we need? You need saran wrap, so the wrap that you put on leftover food in most cases. So take some of that and cover this bowl, which I'm sorry you can't see probably, but it's not that exciting to see. Just the important thing is that it gets done. And okay, so that's almost it. The only thing you want to do, if you have string, take string and take it all around. I sort of improvised. I used duct tape. So whatever tape you might have, the point is that you want to keep it as concealed as possible. As concealed as possible. You don't want anything to escape. You want everything that's in there to stay in there. So, I won't do this. This one isn't the finished product, or won't be the finished product. So, just to show you, just kind of clamp it down on near the top so that none of the air and water from in there escapes. And what's the one last thing you want to do before you step away from the experiment, because like the last one, this does take a little bit of time. That seems to be a common theme today. You'll have to let nature take its course. But you'll want to mark with, I'm using a piece of tape here. So what I think the best way to go about this is to take a piece of tape or some other way to identify where the water level is, but mark where the water is. So in this case, I'm taking the bottom of the tape is at the top of the water. So when things evaporate, as they should, as the water cycle tells us it will, you'll see that the water level will be below the tape in this instance. So if I had put it somewhere in the middle, maybe not so easy to tell. But that is basically the whole experiment. You just put that container or this contraption, this setup, near a window, and just make sure it's in a warm place, preferably maybe even outside. Mine's outside right now. But just put it somewhere where it's going to get hot, going to have access to sunlight most likely, and we should see the results of that. And speaking of which, I'll go get mine from earlier today, and we'll see the end result of what doing something like this looks like. Okay, so just retrieved my water cycle experiment from outside. As you can see, I didn't use a clear one, so it's a little tougher to see. I can explain instead. And as you notice at the bottom of my tape, I drew a black marker to see where my water line was. I actually don't think I left it out there long enough to notice too much of a difference, but as you can see, it's not clear. Let's see. Let's bring the other one over for a second. Okay, so I'm not sure how this is picking up on the camera, but this one, it should be clear. And I don't know if the light reflection is going to change that, but this should be clear. As you'll notice on this one, if you can, there is a bunch of white condensation on the top. That's the evaporated water. That's how ocean water, river water, seawater, any body of water gets into the sky. That's the water vapor that evaporates into the atmosphere. So let's open this up. And the theory, or the hypothesis, was that if there is a water cycle, if it goes from the surface of the earth into the air, that it would come back down too, as rain. So let's see if there is any liquid inside my mug that we put inside. Alright, so alright, there's not much, but you're gonna see there was a little bit in there. So yep, even in an hour or so that I had it outside, we did have a successful result. We did see that there was condensation, which meant there was evaporation, and we saw that there was precipitation, which was the liquid coming back down to the surface when the concentration of water got too high for the atmosphere. Oh, I almost forgot. I wanted to show you why we have to imagine we're scientists, because this scientist was not too careful, and when he moved the jars from the table down to the floor, you spilled a lot of it. So be careful. You won't have a towel handy. But if you can see this, hopefully you can, you'll see that there's the blue and the yellow, and then we have the green. So it did show up, did come out pretty fast, and with enough time, those should equal out and create an equilibrium. So let me bring those up just in case they're not showing up from the floor here. I know it's not the best of angles. I don't have the best of filming areas, but yeah. So as you can see, 3 different colors, and obviously the water's coming from 2 different sources because it's making green, which it wouldn't have if it was just blue or yellow. All right, and we'll move on to the last part of this video. We're gonna check out some resources on getting more information and expanding our knowledge. Okay, so let's wrap up today's couple experiments by getting some more information or showing you where we can do that. As you saw on that first page was breathe. This is actually an illustrated version of the human or the living creature, mammal version of capillaries, and that's why they're called that in the human body. In the lungs, they're the ones that spread the blood around, and that's how they do it, capillary. So that was interesting that actually showed up here. And if we look up capillary, I want to get this book. So you could do it. You could go that route, view this scientific phenomenon from the human body perspective, or I think what would be better. I mean, you could still look for plant life, and there's definitely resources on that. But just to show you another way, there's the Power Kids library, the databases for kids, which is at eResources and Educational and Professional Resources from our website at ZelienopleLibrary.org. And you're taken to this site. You want to click on Gale Info Bits Kids, and it'll take you here. And actually search for something. Capillarity it is. So I've got two good results from this. Not only this, which explains how tall trees get the water they need, as the title says, and how the beanstalk would have been able to grow so high, or how the redwoods in California get to grow so high. You need to know capillarity. That's what makes it work. But, I just got rid of it. Let me get that back real fast. It was this. It was an encyclopedia entry. And, it taught me a lot, too, because I always wondered what made the water in the middle of a measuring cup lower than what appeared to be on the sides. Because if you use a glass measuring cup, if you need 1 cup of liquid or water or milk or something for a recipe, you'd always see it higher at the edge and then in the middle. Same thing with a clear drinking glass, you'd see the water higher at the edges than it would be in the middle. So this actually explains that. The tension between the liquid and the container is actually stronger than the molecules' own bonds within the liquid itself. So that's why you see the water creeping up, in this case, on the sides of the glass. And that's exactly what happened in our experiment today, walking water. That water was bond with the paper, and the paper was stronger than with the water itself. So it climbed up and followed the trail it had available to it, and it went down. So that was a passive process. That wasn't us. That was just this capillarity or capillary action taking place. So that's why the water moved. Normally you don't expect water to move. Of course, it evaporates, like we saw in our second experiment. But I don't think many of us would predict that it would, defy gravity and go into another container. But it did, because this action or this phenomenon was strong enough, or that force was strong enough to make it happen. All right, so I think from here, that'll just about do it. There's plenty of books on the water cycle and on plants and photosynthesis. I did want to mention that trees do contribute to that. Both these experiments kind of go together. So not only do the trees and the beanstalks bring water up from the soil, but they also release the gas from their leaves, which also contributes to what we saw in the second experiment with all the water vapor in the air. When that becomes too condensed and they get too heavy, it'll fall from the air as rain. So they're all connected. You'll see that in nature quite a bit. And so I thought that these experiments were pretty cool. Explains how tall trees can live, how they get their resources, and how they play a part of nature, how water itself is a big actor in all of that. So we're going to put a credits list at the end of this video, and more information. There's a nice PDF I found, and also the instruction worksheet. So in case I didn't explain things so greatly, you'll have it, and you'll be able to find some of these instructions for yourselves. All right, yeah, I'd love to see them too. I don't know how we'd work that out, but if we figure that out for the next week, I'll ask around and see what the proper channels for that are. But I'd love to see your results if possible. All right, have a nice week and nice weekend.